Welcome to Locally Sourced. I'm Amy Campanaro, the Executive Director of the Southeast Museum, and I'm very honored to have with us today Sallie Sypher. Sallie Sypher and I have been friends for 18 years, being that she works at the County Historian's office and I work at the Southeast Museum. We work well together and often. Sallie graduated from undergrad from Mount Holyoke, and then you did your Ph.D. in history at Cornell University. You live in Putnam Valley. You were a councilwoman there, town councilwoman, and then the supervisor, as well as the county historian. And for the last 21 years, you've been a volunteer deputy county historian.
Correct.
So you've been here a while and you know a lot about history in our area, and that's what we're going to pick your brain here today. And as I said, we're fortunate to have Sallie with us, and Sallie has helped me with the museum this year at the Southeast Museum. She's always the go-to person for any historical research within the county. And if the historian's office does not have the records, she points me in the proper places to go to the records. So at the Southeast Museum, we have many exhibits, and we have a wonderful footage here that we're going to show you. So if we can roll that footage. I know that we have some exterior shots of the museum as well as our new exhibit.
Oh. And
here is the outside of the museum. The museum is located at 67 Main Street, on Main Street, in the old Southeast Town Hall building, built in 1896. It's a three-story building. On the register, yes, yeah. Thank you. It's on the National Register of Historic Places. And we have 5 ongoing exhibits at the museum. We have exhibits on the Tilly Foster Iron Mine, the Board and Milk Factory, early farming, reservoir system, circus, as well as 2 new exhibits for this year in 2017. So we have some shots of our gift shop inside. The museum has been in this building since 1963. So we've been in this building quite a long time. Here we have some photos of our Tilly Foster Iron Mine exhibit, which was closed in 1897, the Tilly Foster Iron Mine. Most of the miners there were of Hungarian and Italian descent. And then we have a railroad exhibit on the Harlem Line Railroad. We have actually the clock that came out of the old train station that we had recently repaired. We have Brewster Standard newspaper signs, and as you know, Brewster Standard newspaper is a wealth of information. You can find that online at the Brewster Public Library's website, and it's very searchable, so that's easy to find. And here, kind of behind the scenes before we opened, you saw a dress form and before everyone makes me start to paint and get everything going in the museum, so it's not many people get to see these interior shots. They only see when we're ready for the public. This year we have an exhibit on Centennial Look Back from 1917, 2017, 100 years of looking for women getting the right to vote in Putnam County in New York State, as well as the beginning of World War I, which the United States entered World War I in April 1917. We have some images of local Southeast Brewster guys that were in World War I. We have uniforms. That is William Ross Beale of the Beale family, which is still in Southeast. He was in World War I and actually World War II. He was in the Navy. He was discharged after the war due to a lack of funds from the Navy, since he was in the Navy Reserve. And there's a uniform that we have that belonged to Mallory Stevens. And we have some World War I, just general uniforms.
A lot of people must have loaned you some.
Oh, we do. We had 3 private collectors, and then we have a lot in our collection. In the museum's collection, we have about 8,000 artifacts. Oh. So very hard to find spots to store that. We have a water-cooled machine gun, which is pictured there, a German machine gun, which I won't tell you where that was found, but we have a picture of General Pershing, and then some letters home from World War I veterans.
You have some letters from Brewster, don't you?
We do. We have some letters from the Navy, from Beale, exactly, which is very nice to have those letters writing home to his parents about his experiences and how he was homesick.
You have some with a censor's stamp on them?
Oh, no, we don't. Do you at the historian's office?
I have to give us some.
Okay, very good. And here's actually a photograph of, I believe it was 25,000 men at Camp Wadsworth, and they had them be in the shape of a bell, and they took an aerial photo of that. And then we have 1917 is when New York State passed the women's suffrage amendment. So women got full suffrage in New York State in 1917. It first failed in 1915. In 1917 it passed.
Just as in Putnam County, it failed in 15 and passed in 17. Right.
Very good. And then the women's rights movement comes out of the temperance movement. And Do you want to add something about the temperance movement?
Well, the temperance movement was very strong in Putnam County through the years. There were a great many Methodists here, and Methodists were temperate people. And we have wonderful court cases. When they were, even back in 1835, they were operating sting operations of people selling booze without a license, or and they were getting fined. And in a couple of cases, town justices were being charged with that, and in one case, the sheriff was.
Wow. And here we have some images of the Women's Land Army with Edith Deal. Edith Deal is credited with founding the Brewster Public Library, and she was the national director of the Women's Land Army. And she was very influential in getting the Red Cross chapter here in Southeast and in Brewster.
And in Putnam County.
And in Putnam County as well, and also a very well-known bookbinder. And unfortunately, after the war ended, the Women's Land Army kind of dissipated, and there was no longer a need for that. We have some wonderful images from the New York State Museum, these historic panels, which we are on loan from the League of Women's Voters. So we have that as well.
Are they going to be staying through the whole exhibit?
They will be up through the month of July, and then they're going to be rotating throughout Putnam County.
Good.
So we have that. So Sallie, as we looked at the museum and talked a little bit about the museum and where we are on Main Street, what are the challenges that you find being at the historian's office for so long in preserving history as opposed to when you started to now?
Well, we have seen in just the years that I have been in the historian's office, starting in 1990, a transition from just paper documents to a lot of electronic records. And the same rules that apply in state government to keeping records, paper records, also apply to electronic records. So if there's a demand for records, for instance, from the courts, you have to provide them with the paper and emails or whatever electronic records you
So that means everyone has to print out their emails to be preserved.
Now, paper records, if it's good paper, and your regular old copy paper now is acid-free, it will last for hundreds and hundreds of years if it's kept in the right environment. But electronic records, you can't read the old floppy disks now that you had, to say nothing of the platforms and programs that wrote them.
And speaking of that, what we're doing with the Veteran Service Agency, your office, and the Southeast Museum is VetScan. So what we're doing is we're trying to go out to within Putnam County and say to all the veterans and say that whatever you have, photographs or letters that you wrote home, we would like to scan them for you and give them to you, the finished product, on a flash drive. That way they can preserve their stuff on a digital, and hopefully they will change it to the next,
and keep their paper
and keep their paperwork. But this way, it's a nice service that we're doing, like I said, with the Veteran Service Agency and your office and the museum to try to, honor our veterans for all that they've done, but make sure that that paperwork is not lost, because sometimes that paperwork is damaged, the original. So we try to do that.
Well, I hope that we will look beyond World War II in this, because the Korean veterans are now mostly dying.
Yeah.
And they will be gone soon. So I hope you will.
Well, and at the last vet scan that we had at the museum, we did have some Korean vets come in. So that is you're right, because everyone focuses, on World War II, but you're right, Korea is the next. And unfortunately, our veterans are aging out, that we want to make sure that we capture their stories for their families to have, but also for us to have, to preserve for future generations to know of their experiences. So, Sallie, I always get people asking me these questions of when they come into the museum, Southeast, the town of Southeast. What you're southeast of what? The name of your town makes no sense.
Well, did you know there was a Northeast?
Is there a Northeast?
There's a Northeast.
And why is that?
We were all part of Dutchess County, and the most northeasterly town was the town of Northeast, and you've probably heard of Millerton, that's in Northeast, and the most southeasterly town was Southeast. Only originally, Southeast wasn't shaped like Southeast. It was just a strip of land along the Connecticut border that was the oblong, and that was the original Southeast, which is now part of Patterson too.
Now, why did we separate from Dutchess County?
Oh, well, it was too far to go to Poughkeepsie. If you had to go to Poughkeepsie, say you wanted to sue your neighbor, you had to get a conveyance. You needed a horse or a horse and buggy. it was an all-day trip. When you got there, you had to find a lawyer. You had to stable your horse. You had to stay overnight. This all cost money and had come back. And you even had to go up, if you were in the militia and you were elected an officer of the militia, every year you had to go to Poughkeepsie to take an oath. And it was a big pain.
It was too expensive.
And everybody, you had to carry tax. The supervisor had to carry tax money to Poughkeepsie and bring money back, cash. Roads were dangerous. You know, it was a nuisance. And when we became a county, and the first thing, by the way, we had to do was build a courthouse and a jail. When we became a county, it was like the floodgates had opened as far as lawsuits go.
Oh, really?
Those first few years, everybody was suing everybody.
So when we became our own county in 1812, then everyone said, this is a lot easier than going to Poughkeepsie.
Yeah,
I'm gonna sue.
And we didn't have a courthouse yet. So the courts met in the Baptist church in Carmel, just down the street. And I came across a record the other day. It was wonderful because we wondered when they moved to the new courthouse, which we knew was sometime in 1814. Well, the record showed that they opened court in October of 1814, and the high sheriff, who was Peter Crosby, announced the courthouse is ready. So they adjourn the court in the Baptist church and say, we're going down the street. So the judge and the constables and the jurors and the DA and anybody who was there suing anybody and the lawyers all picked up their books and everything and walked down the street. And I wish I could have seen it.
Oh.
It must have, it's wonderful.
And then they continued the case there.
And then they continued that session of the...
And that courthouse, which is we know as the historic county courthouse, was 1814. And when did they stop using that?
Well, they still use it, actually, for the surrogates court. And, of course, they use it now for the legislature and for ceremonial occasions like Putnam County Day that just passed. But it was used for all the courts, and it was used for the jail in the back until they built the new jail. And then when they renovated the courthouse, they moved all the other courts they moved all the courts out for a while, and they were meeting in the county office building. And then they opened the new court building in 2007.
2007.
So
it had a long, long life.
But we were under orders from the state of New York. You will build a new courthouse because it was totally inadequate. It was built for a population of 10,000 and.
Now, at the historian's office, at the museum, we have many photographs, we have mortgages and deeds and some journals. What do you find the most interesting when you do research?
Well, these days, it's what I'm working on at the moment. And right now, we have a project we're working on with Judge Reitz and Judge Sweeney to put together a history of the courts in Putnam County.
Okay.
And it's a statewide project. Each county is doing this, which is really very valuable because we're finding out how the courts work very differently then. And we're finding out how they worked. Besides getting the names of the judges and finding out something about them, we have been able to correct the lists of the DAs that the district attorney's office had. And we're finding some really interesting court cases and locating where all the court records are. We have some in the historian's office, there's some in the record center, there's some with the court, and we're going to be able to have a comprehensive picture of where things are and who was doing what to whom.
Very good.
So it's fun.
It does sound fun.
And we have 2 interns working with us on this from the courts.
Very good. Now, why would I want to research a court case? Why would that? Would I be doing family genealogy, perhaps? Is that why something I would want to look into a court case? What?
Most people, I would say, at least half the people who contact our office are doing family history.
Okay.
And sometimes the court cases are helpful. The surrogates course, of course, is the most helpful because that is the record of what happened when people's wills were probated.
Okay.
And that will name descendants and so forth. And that's considered a very good kind of record because most people don't lie about who their children are. So we have that kind of record for people doing family history. We have deeds. We have, beside the will, we have mortgages. And we have, those are the main, Then we have local history files. And we keep a record of what we've looked up for other people and what other people have found. And they've given us of their work. So if you're looking for the family of Croft, we'll pull out the Croft file and we will have what we've done and what other people have done. And we don't vouch for it necessarily, except what we've done. But it helps other people.
And I have to say, when I come in to do historical research for the museum on exhibits or projects that we're doing, your office always has people in there. I mean, there's always a researcher, whether they're doing, writing an academic paper or doing family history. Your office is always busy. It is pretty busy.
It's unfortunately, people have a tendency either to come at 1 week we'll have 6 or 7 people come in, and the next week nobody comes in, and unfortunately, it's like a restaurant. You can't even it out. But
when it rains, it pours.
A lot of people, and they come from some distance, often from places like California. We even had somebody from Alaska once.
Wow. We had a gentleman come into the museum, and it was when we were closed in the winter, and we were doing research for the new exhibit. And he came in and he said his great-grandfather worked at the board and milk factory. He said, and I said, well, I don't have that much information on the actual employees, but I have some photographs. And I said, oh, you can look through the photographs. And he said, there he is.
Oh.
I said, how do you know who he is? He said he lost his arm. And there was a man with, with an amputation, and he said, and he had another photo that he matched up. And things usually don't work out that easily. You don't just go through a photo, album or historical, stuff, and within 5 minutes say, there he is, and we sent him on a copy on his way, and he was very happy to have that.
Well, we had somebody in a couple of years ago who didn't know he'd found out the name of his real father. He'd been adopted. He had no idea what his real father looked like until he was found in a yearbook. Wow. We had the yearbook, which was, biological father, I mean.
But, and it's interesting how, historically speaking, we don't just do research and then say, oh, this is what happened in the past, but we kind of make it more of a relevance. We kind of, this is what happens, and we try to make it relevant for people today in their life experience. And sometimes we're able to give people a clue of who they think they are, or who they, who they're searching to be.
Yeah. I find simply the begats. So-and-so's father was his father was kind of boring. But when you can put that together with letters and interesting deeds, sometimes are quite interesting. And court cases, which might be very dull, when you see the same name, for instance, over and over, you know that this guy, this Levi Bailey was one bad apple, And in the end, because we have his father's will, his father was supervisor of Carmel, his father disinherited.
Wow.
But when you put these things together, they're kind of fun. It was no good.
Now, as we were, because I was doing some research about each town and how, especially Southeast, and how they were created, and town council people and justices. You want to share what the interesting thing about town justices that you told me, which I didn't realize?
Okay, the town justices, first they were elected. First they were chosen by the governor, and then in the Constitution of 1821, they started to be appointed. No, then they started to be soon after that elected in the towns, and there were 4 of them, and they served for staggered terms. In each town, so there were quite a few of them. Within the town, the justice's job was to sit in the local court, and they had limited jurisdiction, but they also got together once a year and audited the supervisor's books. The supervisor took care of the money, and that is the origin of the town board. It was the 4 town justices and the supervisor, and in the 20th century, they had 2 justices replaced by councilmen, and I mean men. And then later, the justices went off the town board altogether, and they appointed or elected two more members of the council.
Did the justices have to be attorneys?
No, they did not.
Was there any training,
and
perhaps, in the law?
they don't have to be attorneys today. And in New York State, if you look over New York State, most of them are not.
Really?
In Putnam County, I would say if you're going to run today for town justices, not if you've been around for a while, but you're running today, you would really have to be an attorney. Not by law, but by custom now. But yeah, they were.
That is very, and I know we're going through Southeast, looking at the town council people and board members, and their records and what we were able to, supply them were different. So it's nice that we were able to fill in some blanks.
Yeah, but you got a problem in Southeast.
Oh, yes.
Because you had a disastrous fire and burned up your town records. So that is, so be careful with your...
Where they finally now have built, the town, well, the old town hall, which was the museum is in, it was built in 1896, as you said, in the National Register of Historic Places. But they finally built one out of brick. So, the other two prior had burned, and like you said, we lost all those records. Yeah. And people doing home research,
Do you know what the old one looked like? You have pictures of the old one?
Yes, I do have. It was where Bob's Diner is, the Sprague residence. It was over there. It was a three-story, a beautiful building. But unfortunately, as much of Putnam County, fires and just ravaged the whole Main Street time in and time again. Well,
it happened in Carmel. Of course, the courthouse had a big fire, and at one point, the justices, the Board of Supervisors, which used to govern Putnam County before we had a legislature, they voted, okay, it's a wreck now, shall we fix it up, or shall we now move the county seat to someplace central in the county? And this old building is, they didn't really appreciate old buildings then. It wasn't modern. This was the 1920s. It wasn't modern. So maybe we'll move it to Mahopac, which would have been more central, and the people in the western part of the county, where I happen to live, wanted to see it moved, and the vote was very close. Really? There was only 6 towns, and it was 4-2, and if one person, so they kept it where it was and fixed it up. And then it had to be restored, really restored, in the 1990s, because it had serious water problems and rot. And
now, speaking of the courthouse, when was the first jury that had females?
1937.
1937.
And they were the first women jurors in New York State.
Really? In Putnam County?
Right, in Putnam County.
Wow.
But if you take a look at those women,
you do have a photo.
A formidable bunch. And you would not want to be the defendant if they were judging you. They looked awful.
Oh, very good. Well, we're almost closing. Do you have any remarks or anything that you want to say?
Yes.
Yes.
Save your records, save your photographs, and make sure the people in the photographs and the places and the dates are identified. I cannot tell you how many pictures we have of people we haven't a clue who they were.
And I have to actually say that, a lot of we have people, young people who help us out at the museum, and using tablets and iPhones, and they text everybody and they take photos, but they delete their photos, or they don't, or it goes on the cloud. And I keep telling them, we have all these postcards from 1910, 1915, all these correspondence, written letters, and there's none of that because people text and they email, and then all these photographs, unless you print them out, you may not save them. So I'm wondering what your office or the museum, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, what will we have to talk about 2017?
I don't practice what I preach. What I preach is the important things that emails you send, print them out and save them because they're going to be gone. Mark your photographs and write down the memories of your family and what your mother and grandmother, because your grandfathers and fathers usually told you nothing, but your grandmothers and grandfathers kept as guardians of the family memory. Get it down, because someday you're going to say, I wish I'd asked her while she was alive or while she had all her marbles.
No, that's true. Because I have people in the museum all the time say, oh, I wish I would have asked this. And they said, oh, it's not until I had my own children that I started being interested in my own family history and things like that.
And don't think that if your forebears didn't do something important, that don't think your children won't and grandchildren won't care about it. And just because you didn't do something important, don't think they won't care. They will care. Not right now, but later.
That's true. Now, at the museum, we have some upcoming events. We have music events. I just want to, maybe barbershop quartet from playing music from 1917, so I think that will be interesting. And with our combined offices and the Veteran Services, we have VetScan, which they can look at your website, the County Historian's website, your Facebook page, or the Southeast Museum's Facebook page. And there's some more events of vet scans and other programs that we're doing to hopefully preserve the history for everyone in the future. But
if people want to get in touch with our office and they don't want to do email or whatever, they could call us at 845-808-1420. How could they call you?
No, they can call you first, and then they can call me. So I just want to thank you so much for your time here today.
Fun.
I know that you're busy with the Judge Project and getting all that together. But like I have to say, I've known you 18 years, and every time I'm stumped or I have a question, I call you up, and you give me the right information,
you're always a pleasure.
Or you always put me in the right direction. So, and our offices are right down the street from each other. You're on Marvin Avenue in Brewster. I'm on Main Street in Brewster. So it's so nice, like I said, that you spent your time here today, and thank you very much, Sallie.
You're welcome. Pleasure.